I never thought my life would change because of a bouquet of white roses left in the rain. The storm hit Manhattan that Tuesday, like a warning I was too desperate to hear. Water poured from the awning of my flower shop in thick, angry sheets, flooding the sidewalk where I'd set out the clearance arrangements, my last pathetic attempt to make rent. I watched through the window as petals scattered across the pavement, $20 worth of inventory dissolving into the gutter. My mother's shop, her dream, and I was letting it die. I pushed through the door into the downpour, my hair plastering to my face instantly. I grabbed at stems, my fingers numb, knowing it was already too late but unable to stop myself. The eviction notice had given me 48 hours. 48 hours to produce 3 months back rent. Or everything the vintage counters, the walk-in cooler, the brass nameplate that read Times Moretti and Daughter Times would be gone. My mother had been dead for 2 years. Soon, even her memory would have nowhere to live. Like and subscribe if you love listening these stories. You're going to lose more than flowers if you stay out here. The voice cut through the rain, low and certain. I looked up to find a man crouched beside me, collecting the scattered roses with hands that looked too elegant to be touching wet pavement. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire month's revenue, and somehow the rain made him look more composed, not less. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that held mine a moment too long. There was something unsettling in the way he moved, like he was used to people stepping aside. "I can manage," I said, because I'd learned not to trust help that came without a price. Clearly. But he didn't leave. Instead, he gathered the remaining bouquets with surprising efficiency, following me back into the shop. Water pooled on the tile floor as we stood there, strangers dripping onto my mother's handiwork. He set the flowers on the counter, studying the space with an intensity that made my skin prickle. His gaze lingered on the eviction notice I'd tried to hide beneath a stack of orders. "How much do you need?" he asked simply. My throat tightened. "I don't need charity. I'm not offering charity." He reached into his jacket. I flinched, some instinct firing, and pulled out a card. Cream-colored, expensive, just a name, Adrian Vescari, no title, no company. "I'm offering a solution." I wanted to laugh. Men like him didn't offer solutions to women like me unless they wanted something, and I'd seen enough of the world to know what that something usually was. "I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Marry me." The words hung in the air between us, absurd and impossible. Thunder cracked overhead, and I wondered if I'd heard him correctly. His expression hadn't changed, still that same unnerving calm, like he'd just offered to buy a bouquet instead of proposing to a complete stranger. "Excuse me? I need a wife." "You need money. It's a simple transaction." He said it like he was negotiating a business deal, which I suppose he was. "I'll pay off your debts, keep this shop running, ask nothing from you except your signature on a marriage license. 1 year. After that, we divorce quietly, and you walk away with enough to never worry about rent again." I should have thrown him out. Should have called someone, though I wasn't sure who. The police? For what an insulting proposal? Instead, I found myself frozen, my mind racing through the impossibility of it all. "Why? Does it matter?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "It matters very much." Something flickered across his face, respect maybe, or calculation. "I have obligations. A wife would simplify certain complications in my life. It needs to be someone unconnected to my usual circles, someone who won't ask questions." The rational part of my brain screamed danger. Everything about him radiated warning signs: the expensive suit, the impossible offer, the way he'd said times, obligations, times like it meant something darker than taxes and inheritance. But the irrational part, the desperate part, that had spent the last 6 months watching my mother's legacy crumble, whispered a different word. Salvation. I don't even know you. I managed. "You will." He moved toward the door, and I felt the strangest pang of panic that he was leaving, taking his impossible offer with him. He paused at the threshold, rain still hammering the street beyond. "My attorney will contact you in the morning with the contract details. Read it carefully, Lena Moretti, but know this: I don't make offers twice. How do you know my name?" His smile was barely there, gone before I could analyze it. "The sign outside says Moretti. You wear a daughter's grief in every arrangement." The rest was easy. Then he was gone, swallowed by the storm, leaving only wet footprints and a cream-colored card on my counter. I picked it up with shaking hands, tracing the embossed letters of his name, Adrian Vescari. I'd never heard of him, which somehow made it worse. Men who carried that kind of confidence usually left digital footprints. Society page mentions something. I pulled out my phone, searched his name. Nothing. Not a single result. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my apartment above the shop, listening to rain drum against the windows, and thought about my mother. She'd always said flowers were a language more honest than words, that you could tell everything about a person by what they chose to give, and how. Adrian Vescari had chosen white roses, classic, expensive, appropriate for both weddings and funerals. I couldn't decide which he'd meant. The attorney arrived exactly at 9, a brisk woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Caroline Chen and proceeded to spread documents across my counter like she was dealing cards. The contract was 30 pages long. I'd expected a few paragraphs, maybe a simple prenup. This read like a corporate merger. You'll maintain separate residences initially, Caroline explained, pointing to section 4.2 with a manicured nail. Mr. Vescari's estate has a private wing prepared for you, all living expenses covered. You're free to continue operating your business, though security measures will be implemented. Security measures? Standard protocol for Mr. Vescari's household. She said it like it was normal, like everyone needed armed guards to buy groceries. You'll have a driver, a security detail for public appearances, and a panic button linked directly to his personal team. My hands felt cold. What kind of complications did he say he had? Caroline's expression didn't change, but something shuddered behind her eyes. I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Vescari's private affairs. The contract is comprehensive. I suggest you read sections 7 through 12 carefully. They outline the terms of dissolution after 1 year, including your financial settlement. She slid another paper forward. This is non-negotiable. $5 million, plus full ownership of this property, transferred upon completion of the marriage term. $5 million. The number was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. Because Caroline Chen didn't look like someone who dealt in jokes, and the cashier's check attached to the contract made out for $50,000, marked advance payment, was very, very real. Why is he doing this? I asked again, knowing she wouldn't answer. Mr. Vescari values discretion, Miss Moretti. As should you. Caroline checked her watch, a gesture that felt like dismissal. He needs an answer by noon. The ceremony is scheduled for 4 this afternoon, if you accept. Today? Mr. Vescari prefers not to delay once he's made a decision. After she left, I sat alone with the contract, reading and rereading the clauses that would reshape my existence. Language was careful, clinical. Party A and Party B, mutual obligations, terms of dissolution, buried in section 9. I found something that made my breath catch. Asterisk Party B, agrees to maintain public appearance of marital unity and shall not disclose the contractual nature of this arrangement to any third party, under penalty of forfeiture of all financial agreements herein. Asterisk, so I'd be bought, and I'd have to smile about it, pretend it was love, or at least contentment. The idea made my skin crawl, but then I looked around at my mother's shop, at the cooler that was held together with duct tape and prayer, at the vintage cash register that jammed every third transaction, at the water stain on the ceiling that I'd been staring at for 6 months because I couldn't afford to fix the leak above it, at the eviction notice that had 36 hours left on its countdown. I thought about my mother, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to keep this place alive, who'd made me promise, in those final weeks, that I wouldn't let her legacy die. I'd already broken so many promises to her. Maybe this was my chance to keep just one. At 11:47, I called the number on Caroline's card. I'll do it, I said when she answered. There was a pause, just long enough for regret to start flooding in. Then, a car will collect you at 3:30. Dress appropriately. Mr. Vescari will meet you at the courthouse. The line went dead. I stood there holding my phone, feeling like I'd just stepped off a cliff and hadn't yet started falling. The feeling wouldn't leave me, even as I closed the shop early, even as I stood in front of my closet trying to find something appropriate for a sham wedding to a stranger. I settled on a simple cream dress my mother had bought me for her last birthday. Elegant, understated, probably not expensive enough for wherever Adrian Vescari usually spent his time. At 3:30 exactly, a black Mercedes pulled up outside. The driver was professional, silent, and opened the door like I was someone important instead of someone selling herself for grocery money. The interior smelled like leather and something else expensive cologne, maybe Adrian's. The seats were more comfortable than my bed. We drove through Manhattan, leaving behind my neighborhood's familiar grit for the polished steel and glass of Midtown. The courthouse was old granite, imposing. Caroline waited on the steps, flanking Adrian, who wore a different suit, this one charcoal blue, perfectly tailored to his frame. He looked at me as I approached, and something in his expression softened, just for a moment. "You came," he said. "You doubted?" "I hoped." He offered his arm, an old-fashioned gesture that should have felt ridiculous but somehow didn't. "Shall we?" The ceremony was brief, sterile. A judge who clearly knew Adrian, though I couldn't tell how. Words about commitment and honor that felt like lies in my mouth. When Adrian slipped the ring onto my finger, white gold, simple, probably worth more than my entire inventory, his hands were steady. Mine shook. "You may kiss the bride." Adrian's eyes met mine, a question in them. I nodded, barely, and his lips brushed mine so gently it was almost respectful. Almost, but I felt the heat of him, the controlled power, and something low in my stomach tightened with a feeling I absolutely could not afford to have. Then it was done. I was Mrs. Viscari. The judge signed papers. Caroline witnessed. Adrian's hand settled on the small of my back as he guided me out of the courthouse, and I tried not to think about how natural it felt. The car that waited wasn't the Mercedes. This was bigger, darker, with windows tinted so black I couldn't see inside. When the door opened, I glimpsed the interior leather, wood paneling, a privacy screen between us and the driver. Adrian helped me in with a hand that lingered just a moment longer than necessary. "Where are we going?" I asked, as the car pulled into traffic. "Home," Adrian said simply. But it wasn't my home. It was his. And as the city blurred past the dark windows, I felt the full weight of what I'd done settle over me. I'd married a stranger for money. I'd signed away a year of my life. And the worst part, the part that scared me most, was the small voice in my head that whispered I might have done it even without the financial desperation. Something about Adrian Viscari pulled at me, dangerous and magnetic. The drive took longer than I expected. We left Manhattan entirely, crossing into an area I didn't recognize, old money territory, where properties were measured in acres instead of square feet. Trees lined the private road, their branches forming a canopy that filtered the late afternoon light into something golden and unreal. Then, through the trees, I saw it. The gates. Massive wrought iron, at least 12 feet tall, topped with ornamental spikes that looked decorative but probably weren't. A security guard stepped out of a small booth, recognized the car, and the gates swung open with mechanical precision. Beyond them, a long driveway curved through manicured grounds, gardens that probably employed a full-time staff, a fountain that belonged in a museum, and at the end of it all, the mansion. It wasn't a house. Houses were where people lived. This was a statement, all stone and windows and architectural lines that spoke of old money and older power. I'd seen places like this in movies, never in real life, never as a place I'd be expected to enter, let alone live. "This is your home?" The words came out barely above a whisper. "Our home," Adrian corrected gently. "For the next year, at least." The car stopped at the entrance, where wide stone steps led to doors that looked solid enough to withstand a siege. A man in a dark suit opened my door. Security, I realized, not a butler. I could see it in the way he scanned the surroundings before stepping back to let me exit. Another waited by the entrance, speaking quietly into an earpiece. Adrian guided me up the steps, his hand still on my back. The doors opened before we reached them, revealing an entrance hall that made my breath catch. Marble floors gleamed under a chandelier that belonged in a palace. A double staircase curved up to the second floor, elegant and imposing. Art lined the walls, real art, the kind with museum placards and insurance policies. A woman in her 60s approached, her expression warm but assessing. "Mrs. Viscari, welcome. I'm Helena, the house manager. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask. Mrs. Viscari." The name sounded foreign, like someone else's identity I was borrowing. "Thank you," I managed. "Helena will show you to your rooms," Adrian said, already stepping back, creating distance. "I have some business to attend to. We'll have dinner at 8. Something will be sent up if you'd prefer to rest first." Then he was gone, disappearing down a hallway with one of the security men, leaving me alone with Helena and the crushing weight of opulence. Helena's smile was kind, but I saw her taking my measure, my off-the-rack dress, my worn shoes, the way I was trying not to gawk at my surroundings. "This way, please." She led me up the staircase, our footsteps echoing. "The east wing is yours. Mr. Vescari thought you'd appreciate the morning light. The rooms have been prepared to your specifications." I didn't give any specifications. Mr. Vescari was thoughtful in his assumptions. She opened a door at the end of a long hallway, and I stepped into what could only be called a suite. Bedroom, sitting area, a bathroom visible through another door that looked bigger than my entire apartment. And there, arranged on every surface, were flowers. Not random arrangements, specific ones. My mother's favorites. Peonies and garden roses, dahlias and sweet pea, colors and varieties I'd mentioned in some blog post years ago when I'd still believed the internet, cared about a small shop's design philosophy. He'd researched me. Not just my name, my life, my history, my mother. The thoughtfulness of it made something twist in my chest, uncomfortable and warm at the same time. "There are clothes in the closet," Helena continued, opening a door to reveal more garments than I'd owned in my life. "Mr. Vescari hired a stylist based on your measurements. If anything doesn't suit, simply let me know. Your personal items from the apartment are being packed and will arrive tomorrow." I didn't agree to move everything. Helena's expression was patient, a look that said she'd had this conversation before. "Mr. Vescari believes in thoroughness. Dinner is at 8 in the small dining room. I'll send someone to escort you at 1:45. Please, make yourself comfortable." Alone, finally, I walked through the suite in a daze. The bathroom had heated floors and a tub that could fit 3 people. The closet held designer labels I'd only seen in magazines. On the nightstand, I found an iPad with a note in strong, masculine handwriting. Asterisk, building codes and protocols. Please familiarize yourself. At times I opened it to find documents outlining security procedures. Don't leave the grounds without informing security. Don't answer the door. Don't speak to visitors without clearance. There was a panic button app, pre-installed, with a single red icon. Press for immediate response. The instructions read. What kind of life required a panic button? I walked to the window, looking out over the grounds. Gardens stretched in every direction, meticulously maintained. I could see the gates in the distance, and beyond them, the world I'd left behind. My phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. "The shop's account has been settled. You'll find updated statements in your email. Congratulations on your marriage. C. Chen." Just like that, my debts were gone. My mother's shop was saved. I should have felt relief, maybe even joy. Instead, I felt trapped, standing in a gilded cage wondering what I'd traded for my freedom. As the sun set, painting the room in shades of amber and gold, I tried on one of the dresses from the closet. It fit perfectly, a deep emerald that actually complemented my skin tone. Someone had studied me, cataloged my measurements, my preferences, my life, and I hadn't noticed. I thought about Adrian's calm certainty, the way he'd said times marry me times like it was inevitable. At 7:45, there was a soft knock. A young man in the same dark suit as the others waited to escort me. We walked through hallways lined with more art, more evidence of wealth I couldn't begin to comprehend. The small dining room could have seated 20, but only 2 places were set, at one end of a table that gleamed under soft lighting. Adrian was already there, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. It made him look less formal, more dangerous somehow. He stood when I entered, a gesture that felt automatic. "You look beautiful," he said, and it sounded sincere. "You'd know. You bought the dress." A flicker of amusement. "I apologize if the gesture was presumptuous. I wanted you to feel comfortable." "Comfortable," I repeated, looking around at the room that could double as a small ballroom. Right. Dinner was served by silent staff, course after course of food I couldn't fully appreciate because my stomach was too tight. Adrian made conversation, asking about the shop, my mother, carefully neutral topics that felt like a test. I answered because the silence seemed worse, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being studied. "You haven't asked," he said finally, over dessert I hadn't touched. "Asked what?" "What complications you're solving by being here." I met his eyes, finding them unreadable in the low light. "You told me not to ask questions." I said I needed someone unconnected who wouldn't ask questions. But you're clever, Lena. You must be curious. Curious didn't begin to cover it. Terrified was closer. Will you tell me if I ask? Some of it. Eventually. He leaned back, studying me. For now, know this. You're safe here. No one will harm you under my protection. And I meant what I said a year. Then you're free. I keep my promises. But you're not making one now. About telling me the truth. He smiled. And it wasn't entirely pleasant. No, I'm not. After dinner, I retreated to my suite, exhaustion hitting me all at once. I changed into pajamas, silk, of course, because apparently Adrian Viscari didn't do anything by half measures, and crawled into a bed more comfortable than clouds. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about the security, the guards, the panic button, the way Adrian had said times under my protection times like threats were a given, not a possibility. Somewhere around 2 a.m, I got up and wandered to the window. The grounds were lit by subtle landscape lighting, beautiful and eerie. And there, in the garden below, I saw movement, a figure, barely visible in the shadows, watching the house, watching my window. I reached for my phone, pulling up the panic button app. My thumb hovered over it, heart racing. Then the figure moved, stepping into a pool of light, and I saw the security uniform. Just a guard, making rounds. Of course, but as I watched him disappear back into the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows held more than just security. That somewhere out there, in the world beyond these gates, something was waiting. And Adrian Viscari had just painted a target on my back by putting a ring on my finger. The days that followed had a surreal quality, like I was living someone else's life. I'd wake up in that massive bed, momentarily disoriented by the silence, no traffic sounds, no neighbors shouting, just the whisper of expensive climate control and the distant sound of gardeners working. Helena would appear with breakfast, ask about my preferences, and assure me that yes, I could still go to the shop, but the security detail was mandatory. The security detail turned out to be Marcus, a man in his 30s with the build of someone who broke things professionally and the manner of someone who'd really rather not. He drove me into the city in an SUV with bulletproof glass. Helena mentioned it casually, like she was discussing the weather, and waited outside the shop for my entire shift, clearly bored but vigilant. My staff, the 2 part-time college students who'd stuck with me through the financial crisis, tried not to stare, failed entirely. So, Maya said, arranging tulips with studied casualness, "You got married." I did, to a man with a security guard. Apparently, Lena. She put down the tulips, turning to face me fully. "What's going on? Last week you were 3 months behind on rent, and now you're arriving in an armored car?" I'd rehearsed this, practiced the lie Caroline had outlined in the contract. I met someone. It moved fast. He's private, wealthy, prefers to keep things low-key. Low-key, Maya repeated, looking pointedly at Marcus through the window. Right. I couldn't explain it to her because I couldn't explain it to myself. How did you tell someone you'd sold a year of your life to a stranger? That you were living in a mansion that felt like a museum, sleeping in a bed that cost more than a car, married to a man you saw for maybe an hour a day at carefully orchestrated dinners where you discussed everything except what mattered. Adrian was gone most days, disappearing into whatever business required armed guards and houses with panic rooms. Yes, Helena had shown me the panic room, casual as showing me the linen closet. He'd return for dinner, unfailingly polite, asking about my day like we were normal newlyweds instead of 2 people playing pretend for reasons I didn't understand. But sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Something between calculation and what might have been longing, if men like Adrian Viscari were capable of longing. 2 weeks into my new life, everything changed. "Mr. Viscari has requested your presence at dinner tonight," Helena said, and something in her tone was different. "There will be guests." Guests. The word landed like a threat. What kind of guests? Business associates. She laid out a dress on the bed, black, elegant, conservative. "He'd like you to wear this. And Mrs. Viscari?" Her expression was almost maternal. "Just smile and say little. These dinners can be complex." The dress fit like it was made for me, because it probably was. I studied myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Polished, elegant, the wife of someone important. I looked like I belonged in Adrian's world. I wondered when I'd started feeling like a fraud in my own skin. Marcus escorted me downstairs at precisely 7:30. The small dining room was gone, replaced by the formal one I'd glimpsed only in passing. A space designed to intimidate, all dark wood and crystal, and a table that could seat 30. Adrian waited near the head, and when he saw me, something flickered across his face. Pride, maybe, or possession. He crossed to me, offering his arm. "You look perfect," he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. "Just stay close to me tonight. Let me lead the conversations. Who's coming? People who need to see that I'm settled, stable." His grip on my arm tightened almost imperceptibly. "Married." Before I could ask what that meant, the doors opened. 4 people entered, 3 men and a woman, all dressed like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. But it was their expressions that caught me calculating, assessing, the way predators sized up territory. Adrian guided me forward, his hand settling on the small of my back. "Lena, these are some of my business associates. Michael Torino, Vincent Calabrese, James Chen, and Victoria Ashford." He rattled off names like they should mean something. They didn't, but I smiled like Helena had instructed. "Charmed," Victoria said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "Adrian, you've been keeping secrets. We had no idea you were even seeing anyone." "I prefer to keep my personal life private," Adrian replied, guiding me to a seat beside his at the head of the table. Evidently, Michael Torino, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, took the seat across from me. "Tell us, Mrs. Viscari, how did you meet our Adrian?" The question was casual. The attention behind it wasn't. I felt all 5 pairs of eyes on me, waiting. Adrian's hand found mine under the table, a squeeze that might have been reassurance or warning. "At my flower shop," I said, sticking to something true. "He came in during a storm." "How romantic." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And what does your family think of this whirlwind courtship?" "My family is gone," I said, letting the grief in my voice do the work. "It's just me now." Something passed between the guests, a look I couldn't interpret. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying Adrian. Convenient timing, getting married now, right before the board meeting. "My timing is my own business, Vincent." Adrian's voice was pleasant, but I felt the steel underneath. Dinner was served, and the conversation shifted to business. I didn't understand shipping routes, overseas accounts, territorial disputes that sounded corporate but felt criminal. I stayed quiet, playing the role of decorative wife, but I watched. Saw how they deferred to Adrian even as they probed for weakness. How Victoria watched me like she was cataloging every flaw. How James Chen barely spoke but missed nothing. "Tell me, Lena," Victoria said over the main course. "What do you think of Adrian's art collection?" It was a trap. I could feel it. "I'm still learning to appreciate it," I said carefully. "Adrian has excellent taste. In art, certainly." Her smile was razor sharp. "One wonders about his other acquisitions." Adrian's hand tightened on his wine glass. "Careful, Victoria." "Of course. I'm simply making conversation with your wife." She turned that predatory smile on me. "You seem quite different from Adrian's usual companions. More innocent. Is that a compliment or a warning?" The words were out before I could stop them. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Then, surprisingly, Victoria laughed, genuine, delighted. "Oh, she has teeth. How refreshing." She raised her glass. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Viscari. You'll need them." The rest of dinner passed in a haze of tension disguised as civility. When the guests finally left, air kissing and making vague promises to get together soon, I felt like I'd survived a gauntlet. Adrian escorted them to the door personally, leaving me alone in the dining room with the ruins of the meal. I heard their voices carry from the entrance hall, muffled but intense. Michael Torino's voice, saying something about stability and questions from the families. Adrian's response, too low to hear. Then the door closing, and footsteps returning. Adrian appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted in a way I'd never seen. He'd removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and for the first time, he looked human instead of untouchable. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For what? The interrogation? Or the cryptic warnings?" "Both. All of it." He crossed to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey without asking, handed me one. You handled yourself well. What did Victoria mean about your usual companions? Nothing that matters now. He downed half his glass. This was a test, Lena. They needed to see you're real, that I'm committed to stability. You passed. A test of what? Of whether I'm fit to lead. He met my eyes, and I saw something raw there. Quickly shuddered. There are people who think I'm too young, too reckless, that I make poor decisions. Marrying you was meant to prove otherwise, by parading me in front of your business associates, by showing them I'm building a life, not just an empire. He set down his glass with a sharp click. I know this isn't what you signed up for. The contract said minimal public appearances. What board meeting was Vincent talking about? Adrian went very still. You listen carefully. I'm not stupid, just uninformed. I took a sip of the whiskey, felt it burn. What exactly do you do, Adrian? I manage my family's interests. What interests? Complicated ones. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw him weighing something, making a decision. My grandfather built an empire from nothing. Import-export, initially. It grew, diversified, became substantial. When he died, control was split between various family branches, but I'm his chosen heir. Some people aren't happy about that. Import-export. The way he said it made it sound innocuous, but nothing about tonight had been innocuous. Why did marrying me help? Because it shows I'm thinking long-term. Family, legacy, the things that matter to the board. He crossed to me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I'm sorry I brought you into this. I thought I could keep you separate, safe. But they'll always be watching now, judging. Who are they? People who matter to my business. Not an answer. Lena, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? It was absurd. I didn't know him, didn't know what his business actually was, didn't know anything except that I was in over my head. But standing there, with his dark eyes holding mine and the taste of expensive whiskey on my lips, I found myself nodding. Good. He stepped back, creating distance. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll go over the security protocols more thoroughly. I should have done it sooner. Adrian. He paused at the doorway. Am I in danger? The pause before he answered told me everything. Not while I'm alive. Then he was gone, and I was left alone in a dining room that smelled like wine and lies, wondering what I'd really married into. That night, I dreamed of shadows and roses bleeding red. I woke to someone shaking my shoulder, rough enough to startle me into sitting up with a gasp. Adrian stood over my bed, already dressed despite the darkness outside my windows, his expression urgent. Get dressed. Quickly. He was moving through my room, pulling a bag from the closet I'd never seen. You have 3 minutes. What's happening? Someone breached the perimeter. We're moving you to a secure location until we assess the threat. He tossed clothes at me, jeans, a sweater, sensible shoes. Now, Lena. The command in his voice got me moving. I changed quickly, not bothering with modesty because he wasn't looking anyway, focused on whatever was happening outside. I could hear commotion now, footsteps running, voices shouting orders. My hands shook as I tied my shoes. Adrian grabbed my arm the moment I was ready, pulling me into the hallway where 3 security guards waited. Marcus will take you to the safe house. Do exactly what he says. What about you? I'm staying to handle this. He cupped my face, the gesture so sudden and intimate it froze me. I will come for you. Trust that. Then he was pushing me toward Marcus, who practically carried me down a back staircase I hadn't known existed. We emerged into a garage where an SUV waited, engine running. He shoved me into the back seat, and we were moving before I'd even closed the door. What's going on? I demanded. Who breached the perimeter? Unknown. Mr. Vescari will handle it. Marcus's eyes were on the mirrors, constantly scanning. We pulled through a gate I'd never seen, leaving the estate by a route hidden from the main drive. This is insane. I should be at the shop. The shop is closed. We called ahead. He took a turn fast enough to throw me against the door. Ma'am, I need you to get down, below the window line. Why would... Down, now. The authority in his voice was absolute. I dropped to the floorboard, just as something cracked against the window, a sound I'd only heard in movies but recognized instantly. Gunfire, Marcus swore, accelerating hard. I heard more impacts, felt the vehicle swerve. Stay down, he barked, speaking rapid fire into his radio. We're under fire. 2 vehicles, black sedans, heading toward Rendezvous Point Bravo. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I pressed myself against the floorboard, my heart trying to punch through my ribs. More gunfire, the sounds of impacts. Then Marcus jerked the wheel hard, and we went off-road, bouncing over terrain that wasn't meant for vehicles. Hold on, he said grimly. We crashed through something bushes, a fence, I couldn't tell, and then the ride smoothed out, pavement again. The sounds of pursuit faded. Marcus didn't slow down, his jaw set, eyes never leaving the road. Are they gone? For now. He made another turn, then another, weaving through streets I didn't recognize. The safe house is 20 minutes out. We'll wait there for Mr. Viscari's signal. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. When we finally pulled into an underground garage beneath a nondescript building, I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Marcus helped me out, keeping his body between me and the entrance, scanning constantly. The safe house was a penthouse apartment, sparse but functional. Marcus did a sweep, checking rooms with military efficiency, then finally allowed himself to relax fractionally. You're secure here. Food in the kitchen, secure phone on the table. Don't call anyone except the program numbers. What just happened? My voice came out small, unfamiliar. Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing what to tell me. Someone made a move on Mr. Viscari. You were leverage. Leverage for what? That's above my pay grade, ma'am. He moved to the window, careful to stay to the side. But you need to understand something. Mr. Viscari has enemies, real ones. You're not just his wife now, you're a target. The words settled over me like ice water. Target. Because I'd signed a contract, taken money, put on a ring, because I'd been desperate and stupid, and thought I could play in a world I didn't understand. What is he? I whispered. What does he really do? Marcus looked at me then, something like pity in his eyes. He's the heir to the Viscari Syndicate, one of the 5 families that run the eastern seaboard. And you, Mrs. Viscari, just became the wife of one of the most dangerous men in New York. The floor seemed to tilt. Syndicate, 5 families, words that meant mafia, organized crime, the kind of thing that happened in movies and news stories, not to broke florists in Brooklyn. He didn't tell you. Not a question. He said business complications, import-export. It sounded pathetic even to my ears. That's one way to put it. Marcus's radio crackled. He listened, then nodded. Mr. Viscari is en route. He's fine, he added, seeing my expression. Situation contained. 20 minutes later, Adrian swept in like a storm, still wearing the same clothes from earlier, now rumpled and I saw with horror spotted with blood on the cuffs. He crossed straight to me, gripping my shoulders, eyes searching my face. Are you hurt? No. But Marcus told me. I know what Marcus told you. Adrian shot his security chief a look I couldn't read. Leave us. Marcus slipped out, and suddenly we were alone. Adrian's hands were still on my shoulders, his thumbs tracing circles I wasn't sure he was aware of. Up close I could see the strain in his face, the evidence that whatever he'd handled tonight had cost him. This wasn't supposed to happen yet, he said quietly. I thought I had more time. That they'd wait until after the board meeting to make a move. Who? The Calabrese family. Vincent's branch. He released me, raking a hand through his hair. They want control of the syndicate. My marriage threatened that because it signals stability, legitimate succession. They were hoping to rattle me, show I can't protect what's mine. I'm not yours. The words were automatic, hollow. The hell you're not. The intensity in his voice startled me. You're my wife, Lena. On paper, yes, but to them, you're leverage, a weakness, and they'll exploit that unless I prove otherwise. By doing what? Keeping me locked up? By keeping you alive. He turned away, and I saw the tension in his shoulders. I should let you go, annul the marriage, pay you the money anyway, send you back to your life. It would be safer. But you won't. No. He faced me again, and there was something almost anguished in his expression. Because I need you. Not just for the board, not just for stability. I need. He cut himself off. This is what I am, Lena. What I've always been. My grandfather ran this organization for 40 years, kept peace, built something that mattered. When he died, Everyone expected my uncle to take over. Respectable, established. But he chose me, 19 years old, and the old man picked me, because he said I had the vision to take us legitimate, to build something that would last beyond threats and violence. So you married a stranger to prove you're stable. I married you because from the moment I saw you in that flower shop, trying to save something beautiful in the middle of a storm, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. He stepped closer, and I couldn't move, pinned by the raw honesty in his face. Hope. The idea that things could be different. Better. You're not part of this world, Lena. You're proof that there's still something clean left to protect. The words hung between us, too honest, too revealing. I should have been angry, terrified. Instead, I felt something shift in my chest, dangerous and unwelcome. I didn't sign up for gunfire, I said. Finally. I know, and I'm sorry. He touched my cheek, gentle. But you're in it now. The only way out is through. And that means a year of this. Of protection and precautions, and learning to live in my world. After that, I'll make sure you disappear so thoroughly no one will ever connect you to me again. You'll be safe. And if I can't last a year? His expression hardened. Then we both lose. Because if I can't protect you, I don't deserve to lead. And if they take you... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I should have demanded out. Should have called Caroline, invoked whatever escape clause the contract surely had for attempted murder. But standing there in a safe house at dawn, looking at a man who was equal parts salvation and damnation, I found myself thinking about my mother. About how she'd never back down from a challenge, never let fear win. Tell me the truth, I said. All of it. What you do, what this world is, what I'm really part of. No more pretty lies about import-export. Adrian studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but once I tell you, you can't unhear it. I already can't unhear gunfire. A ghost of a smile. Fair point. He gestured to the couch, and we sat. The leather cool under my legs. The Viscari family has been in New York for 4 generations. We started in shipping, that part's true, but we expanded into other enterprises. Protection, gambling. Eventually, we became one of the 5 families that manage organized interests on the eastern seaboard. We're not the Corleones, Lena. We don't traffic drugs, don't target civilians. We run businesses that operate in gray areas, yes. But my grandfather built a code. Honor. Boundaries. You're the Mafia. We're a syndicate. The distinction matters. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. When my grandfather died, he left me in charge because he believed I could take us legitimate. Legal ventures, political influence, real estate development. I've been working toward that for 3 years, buying out the dirty interests, reinvesting in clean business. But the old guard families like the Calabrese, they don't want change. They want to keep bleeding the old rackets dry. And marrying me helps how? The board meets in 6 weeks. They'll vote on my proposal to restructure the organization, invest in legitimate growth. I need a majority, and several members are undecided. They see me as young, impulsive, a bachelor with nothing to lose. But a married man? Someone building a family, thinking long-term? That's someone who can be trusted with a legacy. It was insane. All of it. And yet, sitting there listening to him lay it out like a business plan, it almost made sense. Almost. What happens if you lose the vote? Control goes to a council, probably headed by Vincent, and everything my grandfather built, the code, the boundaries, the plan for legitimacy, it dies. We become what everyone thinks we already are, criminals without honor. You're asking me to help you stay in power. I'm asking you to help me change what power means. He met my eyes, and I saw desperation there. 1 year, Lena. Let me protect you, give you security in exchange for your presence at dinners and events. Help me prove I'm someone who can be trusted. After that, you disappear with enough money to do anything you want. Open 10 flower shops, travel the world, whatever you dreamed about before I complicated your life. I wanted to say no. Wanted to walk away from this insanity, back to my simple life where the only thing dangerous was overdue bills. But I thought about the attack, about Marcus saying times you're a target now, asterisk. Adrian was right, I was in it. The only way out was through. 6 weeks until the vote? Yes. And after? Even if you win? We maintain appearances for the full year. Give it time to settle, prove it's real. Then, a quiet divorce. A clean break. He reached out, taking my hand. I know I have no right to ask this of you, but I'm asking anyway. His hand was warm, calloused in places that suggested he did more than sign papers. I thought about my mother, about her belief that some risks were worth taking for the right reasons. I wasn't sure Adrian Viscari was the right reason, but maybe stopping something worse was. No more lies, I said finally. No more surprises. If something's coming, you tell me. Deal. And I want to learn to protect myself. Shooting, self-defense, whatever it takes. His eyebrows rose. You want combat training? I want to not be helpless. I squeezed his hand, feeling the strength there. If I'm a target, I should be a difficult one. Something shifted in his expression, respect, maybe, or the beginning of something deeper. I'll arrange it. Anything else? Yeah. I looked at him squarely. If we're going to convince people this marriage is real, you need to actually spend time with me, not just dinners with witnesses. Real time. Because right now, we're strangers playing dress-up, and people like Victoria, they see through it. You want us to act like a real couple. I want us to at least know each other. I pulled my hand back, suddenly aware of how long we'd been touching. Unless you have a problem with that. No problem. But his voice was rough, and when he stood, putting distance between us, I wondered if he was as affected as I was. We'll go back to the estate in a few hours. Once security confirms it's clear, try to get some rest. He moved toward the door, but I stopped him. Adrian, the blood on your cuffs, whose is it? He looked down, seeming to notice it for the first time. Not mine. Don't worry about it. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the implications. Not his blood, which meant someone else's, someone who'd made a move against him and paid for it. I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt something I didn't want to examine too closely, relief that he was the kind of man who fought back. The mansion felt different when we returned. Less like a prison, more like a fortress. Security had doubled. I counted at least 8 guards, where there had been 4. Adrian gave me a tour I should have had weeks ago, showing me the panic room, actually rooms, plural. The security center where monitors showed every angle of the property, the safe routes out if we were ever compromised. This is your world, I said, standing in the security center, watching feeds of guards patrolling gardens that had seemed so peaceful before. This is my responsibility. He pulled up a feed showing the front gates. Every person on this property, I'm accountable for. That includes you now. Over the next week, my education began in earnest. Marcus taught me to shoot in a private range beneath the estate, his patience surprising as he corrected my stance, my grip, my breathing. You're not trying to kill, he explained. You're trying to create distance. Give yourself time to run. Center mass. 2 shots. Move. Adrian brought in a defense instructor, a woman named Sophia, who was half my size and threw me across the mat 6 times before I learned to fall properly. Your size is an advantage, she said. People underestimate small women. Use that. And in the evenings, Adrian kept his promise. We'd have dinner, real dinners, without witnesses and talk. He told me about his grandfather, a man who'd come from nothing and built an empire through strategic thinking and an ironclad code of ethics. He never hurt civilians, never dealt drugs, never broke his word. The other families called him weak, but they respected him. Fear is easy. Respect is harder. I told him about my mother, how she'd taught me that flowers had meaning, that arranging them was a language of emotion and intent. She said you could tell everything about a person by how they treated something fragile, whether they tried to preserve it or just took what they wanted and moved on. What do you think I'm doing? Adrian asked one night. Over wine neither of us was really drinking. I don't know yet. I met his eyes across the table. Preserving or taking? Both, maybe, or trying to figure out the difference. The honesty was becoming dangerous. We were spending too much time together, learning too much. I'd catch myself noticing the way he listened, really listened. When I talked about the shop, he'd touch my hand across the table, casual gestures that lasted a moment too long. When Sophia threw me particularly hard during training, Adrian was there with ice and careful hands checking for damage. You're getting good at this, he said one night, after I'd actually managed to flip Marcus during a drill. I'm motivated. Turns out almost dying makes you take self-defense seriously. I won't let them touch you again. The intensity in his voice made me look up. I mean that, Lena. You can't control everything, Adrian. Watch me. 2 weeks after the attack, we attended another dinner. Different guests this time, real estate developers, politicians, the kind of legitimacy Adrian was courting. I wore a blue dress he'd chosen, and when we entered the room together, his hand on my back, I felt the shift in perception. We looked like a unit now, a couple. One of the politicians, a silver-haired man named Reynolds, cornered me near the bar. You're quite the surprise, Mrs. Viscari. Adrian never seemed like the marrying type. People are full of surprises. Indeed. He sipped his drink, studying me. Tell me, what does your family think of your new connections? My family's gone, but I think my mother would appreciate that Adrian's working toward building something legitimate. She believed in second chances. Reynolds' eyebrows rose. Second chances. Interesting choice of words. After the dinner, Adrian found me on the terrace, needing air. Reynolds was fishing, I said, trying to figure out if I know what you really are. What did you tell him? That you're working toward legitimate business, that I believe in second chances. I turned to face him. Was I wrong? No. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the shadow of stubble on his jaw. You were perfect. You're always perfect. I'm really not. You are to me. The words were soft, almost accidental, and I saw the moment he realized he'd said them aloud. Saw him consider taking them back, then decide against it. Lena. Whatever he was going to say was interrupted by Marcus appearing in the doorway. Sir, we have a situation. Adrian's expression shut down instantly. All business. What kind? The Calabrese just moved on one of our distribution centers. 3 of our people injured, product destroyed. I watched Adrian's jaw tighten, saw the calculation in his eyes. Assemble the senior crew. War room in 20 minutes. He glanced at me. This is going to be a long night. What are you going to do? What I have to. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, quick and unexpected. Go to your room. Lock the door. Marcus will station someone outside. Then he was gone, Marcus trailing him, leaving me alone on the terrace with the taste of something changing between us. We were supposed to be playing roles, maintaining distance, but somewhere in the training sessions and honest dinners and small touches, something real had started growing. And in his world, real things were the most dangerous kind. I didn't sleep. Couldn't, knowing Adrian was somewhere in the house making decisions about violence and retribution. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and wandered downstairs, following the sound of voices to what Helena had called the library but was clearly more than that. The door was cracked. Through it, I could see Adrian with 5 other men, papers spread across a table, their expressions grim. I started to retreat, but Adrian's voice stopped me. Come in, Lena. He'd known I was there. Of course he had. I pushed the door open, suddenly aware I was in pajamas and a robe, completely unprepared for whatever this was. Gentlemen, my wife. Adrian gestured me forward. Lena, this is my senior counsel. They're helping me decide how to respond to tonight's attack. The men studied me with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. One of them, younger than the others, actually smiled. The famous Mrs. Viscari. You're shorter than I expected. Should I be taller? You should be more careful. Another man said, not unkindly. This isn't a conversation for civilians. She stays. Adrian's voice allowed no argument. If we're asking her to be part of this world, she should see what that means. So I sat, silent, as they discussed retaliation options. Move against the Calabrese directly too dangerous, would trigger all-out war. Hit their revenue streams more subtle, but too slow. Appeal to the board complicated by politics. Each option had risks, consequences, potential body counts discussed with the casual efficiency of a business meeting. What if you do nothing? I heard myself say. They all looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Nothing? The young one echoed. Not nothing. But what if instead of retaliating, you absorb the hit and use it at the board meeting? Show that you're not reactionary, that you can take a blow and still think strategically. Isn't that what legitimate businesses do? Silence. Then one of the older men barked a laugh. She's got a point. The board's already nervous about stability. We go to war right before the vote. We prove Vincent's point that we're too volatile. They'll see it as weakness, another argued, or strength. Adrian was looking at me with something like amazement, The strength to prioritize long-term goals over short-term pride. What else? You document everything. Make sure the board knows exactly what happened, who initiated, who showed restraint. Then you let Vincent know privately that you're keeping a ledger, and that after the vote, when you have full authority, you'll expect restitution. A delayed vengeance, the young man mused. Cold. I like it. They debated for another hour, but I could see Adrian's mind was made. When the men finally left, he pulled me aside, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. That was impressive, he said simply. It was obvious. You can't win a vote for legitimacy while acting like the old guard. Most people wouldn't see it. They'd see an attack and demand immediate retaliation. But you, he cupped my face, the gesture becoming familiar. You think like a strategist. Where did you learn that? Running a business on no money teaches you to play the long game, to absorb hits and keep moving. I covered his hand with mine. Adrian, what happens if Vincent keeps pushing? Then eventually, I stop playing games and remind him why my grandfather chose me. The darkness in his voice sent a chill through me, but not yet, not before the vote. He walked me back to my room, quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. At my door, he hesitated. I meant what I said earlier. You're perfect, not just tonight, every day. You're smarter than half my council, braver than most of my soldiers. I don't know what I did to deserve you walking into my life, but... Adrian. I touched his chest, feeling his heart beat rapid and strong. Don't what? Don't make this real. But even as I said it, I knew it was too late. It had been real for a while now. Maybe from the moment he'd helped me gather flowers in the rain. We have 6 more weeks until the vote. Let's just focus on that. He nodded, but his eyes held mine, and I saw the same truth reflected there. This thing between us, whatever it was, had stopped being about contracts and convenience. It was becoming something else, something neither of us had planned for. 6 weeks, he agreed quietly. Then we'll figure out the rest. But 3 weeks later, there was no rest to figure out. Because 3 weeks later, Vincent Calabrese stopped playing games entirely. I was at the shop when it happened, arranging a wedding order, Marcus stationed by the door like always. Maya was complaining about her boyfriend, and I was half listening, my mind on the dinner Adrian had planned for that night, just the two of us. He'd said, no business, no guards, almost like a real date. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, beautiful flowers. Shame if something happened to them. Asterisk, I stared at it, ice flooding my veins. Looked up to show Marcus, and that's when the windows exploded. I hit the floor on instinct, Sophia's training kicking in. Heard Marcus shouting, heard Maya screaming, heard the sharp crack of gunfire. Then Marcus was dragging me toward the back room, his body shielding mine, barking orders into his radio. Get down! He shoved me into the walk-in cooler, the coldest, most secure room. Stay here. Do not come out until I tell you. Maya. I'll get her. Do not move. He slammed the door, and I was alone in the cold darkness among my mother's flowers, listening to chaos outside. More gunfire, shouting. Then, terrifyingly, silence. The door opened. I pressed back into the shelves, grabbing the only weapon available, pruning shears. If they were coming for me, Lena, it's me. Marcus, looking grim. We need to move. Now. Maya? She's safe. Out the back. He pulled me from the cooler, through the destroyed shop. Everything was shattered glass, vases, flowers scattered like the day I'd met Adrian. But darker now, dangerous. Black van, 2 gunmen. We took them down, but this was a message. From Vincent. Who else? We hit the street where his SUV waited, engine running. Mr. Vescari's been notified. He's meeting us at a secondary location. The drive was tense. Marcus taking routes I didn't recognize, constantly checking mirrors. We pulled into an underground garage attached to a building I'd never seen, and Adrian was already there, looking wild in a way I'd never witnessed. He pulled me from the car before it fully stopped, hands running over me, checking for damage. I'm fine, I said, though I was shaking. Maya's okay. Marcus got us out. This was an escalation. His voice was ice. They came after you directly. They destroyed my shop. I'll rebuild it. Better. But right now, He pulled me close, and I felt the tension vibrating through him. Vincent just declared war, and he's using you as the battlefield. The safe house was different this time. Higher security, more remote. Adrian didn't leave, camping out in the living room with Marcus and 3 other guards, coordinating response. I sat watching the sun set through bulletproof windows, trying to process that someone had shot at me, at my shop, at the last piece of my mother I had left. We move against him, I heard Adrian saying to Marcus. Quietly, but effectively. I want his supply lines choked, his revenue frozen, and I want him to know it was me. That'll force his hand before the vote. I don't care anymore. Adrian's voice was raw with fury. He touched her, Marcus. He went after my wife in broad daylight. That can't stand. But it was the wrong move, and even grief-stricken. I knew it. I stood, walking into their war room. Don't. Adrian turned. Lena, don't retaliate. Not yet. I looked between them. This is what he wants. You lose your temper, act rashly, prove to the board that you can't control yourself when pushed. You lose the vote, you lose everything. He shot up your shop, and you'll make him pay, after. I moved to Adrian, forcing him to look at me. You said you're building something legitimate, that you're different from them. Prove it. Take the high road for 3 more weeks. Win the vote. Then, I swallowed hard. Then you do what you have to. They could have killed you, but they didn't. Because Marcus was there. Because you've been protecting me. I gripped his arms. I knew the risks, Adrian. I chose to stay. Don't let my choice be what costs you everything. I watched him struggle, saw the war between rage and reason. Finally, he nodded, pulling me against him. 3 more weeks, then I end this. But Vincent Calabrese had other plans. 4 days before the board meeting, I was shopping with Helena supervised, guarded, in a high-end district Adrian had cleared as safe. I was looking at fabric for new chair cushions for the shop, trying to feel normal, when Helena's phone buzzed. Her face went white. We need to leave. Now. What's wrong? Just move. She gripped my arm, pulling me toward the exit. But we were too slow. A black van screeched to a stop outside, and men poured out, moving with military precision. Helena shoved me behind her, reaching for something in her purse, but there were too many of them. I felt hands grab me, rough and efficient. Heard Helena shouting. Then a cloth pressed over my mouth and nose, chemical sweet, and the world went gray at the edges. My last thought before darkness took me was of Adrian, and whether he'd keep his promise to come for me. I woke to cold concrete and the smell of industrial decay. My head pounded, my mouth tasted like chemicals, and when I tried to move, I realized my hands were zip-tied to a chair. Panic flooded in, sharp and immediate, but I forced it down. Sophia's voice in my head, asterisk, panic makes you useless. Breathe, assess, plan. Asterisk, I was in a warehouse. Empty, except for a few crates, and the chair I was bound to. High windows showed darkness night, but I had no idea which one. A door opened across the space, and 3 men entered. The one in front I recognized from Adrian's dinner party. Vincent Calabrese, Mrs. Vescari. So glad you could join us. He pulled up another chair, sitting casually, like we were having tea. I apologize for the accommodations. Wasn't exactly planning a social call. Adrian will kill you for this. Will he? Vincent smiled. That's exactly what I'm counting on. See, your husband has been very restrained lately. Very strategic. It's been impressive, really. But here's the thing, the board votes in 3 days, and several members are still undecided. They want to know if Adrian can handle real pressure, real loss, and what better test than taking something he values. I'm not valuable to him. It's a business arrangement. Please. I've seen how he looks at you, how he's rearranged his entire security apparatus around protecting you. You're not a contract, sweetheart. You're a weakness. He stood, and I forced myself not to flinch. Here's what's going to happen. My men are going to send your husband proof that we have you. Then we're going to wait. If he comes alone, trying to negotiate, we kill you both and I take control by default. If he comes with his army, he proves he's still the same reckless kid who shouldn't be running this organization. Either way, I win. And if he doesn't come at all? Vincent's smile was reptilian. Then I send you back to him in pieces, and he loses his mind anyway. Truly, there's no good outcome here for Adrian. Only varying degrees of disaster. They left me alone after that, tied to the chair in the dark warehouse, with nothing but my fear and my training. The zip ties were tight, professional. But Sophia had taught me about zip ties that they had a weak point if you knew how to exploit it. It would take time, and my wrists would bleed. But panic creates adrenaline, and adrenaline dulls pain. I started working the ties, slow and methodical, ignoring the bite of plastic against skin. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt meaningless. I heard guards outside, their radio chatter. They were waiting for word from Adrian, for the trap to spring. But I remembered something Adrian had said. Asterisk. You're smarter than half my council, braver than most of my soldiers. Asterisk. He'd meant it. And he'd come for me when he came for me. I needed to be ready to help, not just a damsel waiting for rescue. The zip tie finally gave, my right hand pulling free in a rush of pain and relief. I worked on the left, slower because of the angle. Got it loose just as the warehouse door burst open. Adrian came through like avenging fury, Marcus and 6 others fanning out with military precision. I saw Vincent's guards react, reaching for weapons, and everything slowed down into terrible clarity. Down! I dropped from the chair as gunfire erupted, scrambling for cover behind a crate. Through the chaos, I saw Adrian fighting his way toward me, saw Vincent retreating toward a back exit, saw one of the guards swinging his weapon toward Adrian's unprotected back. Sophia's training, Marcus's lessons, all of it coalesced into a single moment. I grabbed a piece of rebar from the floor and swung as the guard passed my position, catching him hard across the knee. He went down, weapon skittering away, and I grabbed it because that's what you did when the choice was fight or die. Lena, Adrian's voice, raw with fear and relief. I'm okay. The weapon felt foreign but necessary in my hands. Vincent went out the back, but Adrian was already at my side, pulling me close, checking for damage even as his men secured the warehouse. Are you hurt? My wrists. That's all. I showed him the bloody abraded skin where the zip ties had cut in. Adrian, Vincent. Can wait. He was shaking, I realized. This man who commanded criminals and faced down death threats was shaking as he held me. I thought I'd lost you. When they sent the photo of you tied up, I'm okay. I'm here. I touched his face, grounding both of us. How did you find me? Helena got a tracker signal out before they took her down. She's in surgery now, but she'll recover. His jaw tightened. This ends tonight, Lena. No more waiting for the vote, no more strategy. Vincent is tonight. No, I gripped his arms. Listen to me. 2 days. You wait 2 days, you win the vote, then you have full authority to handle him properly. If you kill him now, you're just another mobster. If you win the vote first, you're a leader dealing with a threat to the organization. The distinction matters. He kidnapped you, and you rescued me. The board will hear about this, Adrian. They'll know Vincent was willing to harm a spouse, break the code your grandfather built. That plays in your favor. I saw him struggling with rage and reason again. 2 days. Trust me. Marcus cleared his throat. Sir, we have Vincent's men in custody. Vincent himself got away, but we're tracking him. Let him run, I said, surprising myself. Let the board see him run. Let them see you show restraint even now. Then, after the vote, I looked at Adrian, seeing the darkness I'd always known was there. Then you end it. Adrian studied me for a long moment, and I saw the moment he decided to trust me over his instincts. 2 days. But Lena, if he makes another move, all bets are off. He won't. He's already lost and doesn't know it yet. We returned to the estate as dawn broke, me wrapped in Adrian's jacket, him unwilling to let me out of arm's reach. The doctor who came to treat my wrists also gave me something for the shock, but I refused to sleep. Instead, I sat with Adrian in the library, watching the sun rise over his empire. You should have run, he said quietly. When you got free of those ties, should have hidden, let us handle it. I was part of it. I wanted to fight. You could have been killed. So could you. I shifted closer on the couch, our shoulders touching. For what it's worth, I wasn't scared. Not when I knew you were coming. He turned to look at me, and something had changed in his expression. Something raw and honest and terrifying in its intensity. I love you. The words hung between us, impossible and true. Adrian, I know. We had a contract, an arrangement, a year and then you disappear. His hand found mine, careful of the bandages. But somewhere between the dinners and the training and you talking my counsel into strategic patience, I fell in love with you. And I need you to know that before the vote, before whatever happens next. You deserve to know. I should have said it was complicated. Should have reminded him about boundaries and business arrangements. Instead, I heard myself say, I love you too. His kiss was gentle, reverent, tasting like dawn and promises we hadn't meant to make. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. After the vote, he said. After this is over, I'm not letting you go. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. The board meeting was held in a private hotel ballroom that had been swept for security 3 times. I sat in the family gallery with a handful of other spouses, watching Adrian present his vision for legitimate enterprise to the 15 board members who would decide his future. Our future. He was magnificent. Calm, strategic, outlining revenue projections and legal frameworks with the precision of someone who'd spent years planning this moment. He acknowledged the recent conflicts, framed them as the last gasp of an old guard resistant to change, pointed out his restraint, his strategic thinking, his commitment to the code. When Vincent's representative tried to speak, Vincent himself was conspicuously absent. Adrian cut him off with a single line. Those who kidnap spouses have already voted against honor. The board can decide if that's the leadership they want. The vote wasn't even close. 12-3 in Adrian's favor. I watched him accept the authority his grandfather had meant for him, saw the relief and triumph in his expression. When his eyes found mine across the room, I saw something else too, love, and the promise that we'd find our way through this together. Afterward, at the estate, surrounded by his council and allies celebrating the victory, Adrian pulled me aside to the garden. The same garden where I'd watched shadows that first night, afraid and alone. It's done, he said simply. Not quite. Vincent's still out there. Not for long. We know where he is. My men move at dawn. I should have felt something about that guilt, maybe, or fear. Instead, I felt only cold certainty. Good. What happens now? Adrian asked. With us? Well, we have a contract for 9 more months. I'm willing to renegotiate. His hand settled on my waist, familiar and right. How do you feel about making this permanent? The marriage or the partnership? Both. All of it. I want you beside me, Lena. Not as an arrangement, but as my wife, my partner, my equal. I thought about my mother, about her belief in second chances and preserving fragile things, about how I'd come into this world afraid and desperate, and found something I'd never expected. Love, yes, but also strength, purpose, the knowledge that I could survive in darkness and still choose to fight for light. I have conditions, I said. Name them. The flower shop reopens. I run it myself, security or not. Done. I want to be part of the business. Real part, not just for show. Already planning on it. And you never, ever lie to me again. No more surprises, no more protection through ignorance. We're in this together or not at all. Adrian's smile was real, warm. The one I'd learned meant he was genuinely happy. Together, always. He kissed me there in the garden as dawn approached, and I kissed him back, tasting our future complicated and dangerous and absolutely worth fighting for. We'd started with a contract in a storm, a desperate florist, and a mafia boss with enemies, but we'd become something else entirely. We'd become partners, equals, maybe even proof that love could grow in the darkest places, if you were brave enough to let it. 3 months later, my flower shop reopened with a grand ceremony that drew half of Manhattan's elite, and at least 2 city council members Adrian had charmed into supporting small business initiatives. The restored space was beautiful, my mother's vintage aesthetic preserved but enhanced, security cameras hidden behind architectural details, a reinforced back door that looked decorative but could withstand a small army. Maya returned as manager, now with a pay raise and benefits, still giving me skeptical looks but no longer asking questions. Some things were better left unspoken. Vincent Calabrese had disappeared completely. Officially, he'd retired to Sicily. Unofficially, he'd met with an accident involving a shipping container and the East River. Adrian didn't discuss the details, and I didn't ask. Some parts of his world I was still learning to navigate. But the legitimate business was growing. Adrian had secured contracts for waterfront development, tech sector investment, renewable energy projects. The syndicate was transforming, slowly but steadily, into something his grandfather would have been proud of. And I was part of it, sitting in meetings, offering strategic input, proving that a florist from Brooklyn could hold her own with people who'd built empires. At night, we'd return to the estate that had stopped feeling like a prison and started feeling like home. Adrian would find me in my flower studio, a new room he'd had built specifically for arrangements, and we'd talk about our days like normal couples, if normal couples discussed quarterly earnings and security protocols over wine. "Happy?" he asked one evening, coming up behind me as I worked on an anniversary arrangement. Surprisingly, yes. I leaned back into him. I still can't believe this is my life. Which part? The mansion or the mafia boss husband? The part where I was desperate enough to marry a stranger, and lucky enough that he turned out to be worth it. Adrian turned me around, his expression soft. "I'm the lucky one. You saved me, Lena. From becoming something I didn't want to be. We saved each other." I touched his face. This man I'd feared and fought beside and fallen helplessly in love with. That's what partners do. Our story was never meant to be ordinary. I'd accepted a proposal in the rain, unaware the man was a mafia boss with enemies. I'd navigated danger and deception, learned to fight and strategize, survived kidnapping and gunfire. I'd helped transform a criminal empire into something approaching legitimate, and in the process, transformed myself from a struggling florist into someone who could hold her own in any boardroom or battlefield. But more than that, I'd found love in the most unexpected place. Not the clean, simple love of storybooks, but the complicated, hard-won love of two people who'd chosen each other despite everything, who'd looked at each other in the middle of chaos and decided that this us was worth fighting for. As Adrian kissed me there in my flower studio, surrounded by petals and possibilities, I thought about that first night when I'd seen white roses and couldn't decide if they meant weddings or funerals. In the end, they'd meant both. The death of who I'd been and the beginning of who I'd become. And I wouldn't change a single petal of it.